1, 2, 3, and we're live.
Yay.
Okay, so it's Monday today, and I had an amazing guest before, and then I was like, this Monday is not done. I'm gonna have this other amazing guest, and here we have Uri. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
It has been a long time. We're trying to put that thing together, and then it's like he's flying around the world. He's in China. He's whatever. He's in the world. Okay, stay in Amsterdam with us just for today. So thanks again for coming. So for people who don't know Uri, I'm gonna introduce you, and then I'll let you add more stuff there. So you are, let's say, can I say just a musician? Because that will just work.
Yeah, you can just
that will work. Yeah. But anyway, so you're a software engineer. You're a open source engineer. That's actually the best way to put it in a way, based on your work. And you work on you love GraphQL. You work on the specification of like the subscription. I believe you were part of the Meteor team, and then at some point the Apollo team. So for people working in the GraphQL ecosystem, those are big player in there. And you're the founder of a company, or a secret company called The Guild. So we guys, okay, it won't be secret anymore since he's going to tell us more about it. And but you live around the world. You help companies with their GraphQL issues, and some company want to migrate to GraphQL and they don't know how, and what are the benefits. So you help them with those. In Amsterdam, I know you work with a few companies in the city, but also in Denmark, Copenhagen, and a few places. So you tell us more about it. So welcome again.
Thank you.
Is there something that needed to be added there?
I don't know. I mean, we can talk about my childhood and stuff.
So, once before starting this this podcast, there is this idea of people have a stereotype of what it means to be a software engineer. How to get into software engineering? You need to go to that school. You need to do X, Y, Z. But your trajectory is different. Can you tell us quickly in short what?
So first of all, thanks for having me. I'm really excited. Most of what you said is true. I think, when I started, I started very late programming, or I mean, it's all relative, right? But
yeah, it's true.
I was a musician. Like, I didn't finish high school.
Yeah.
While I was being in high school, I just didn't understand why I need to be there. I didn't get the point. And at that point, I was a musician. I already started teaching guitar, and performing and doing all of that. So
touring.
Yeah. So I didn't see the need of like just being at school. So I just left school and started. And I told my mom, like, it's going to be okay because I know what I want to do in my life already.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
And of course, that completely changed. So that was like, of course, I didn't do anything, but that was, I was fully into that. I knew I even had my career path, and now I'm going to, being a musician is not hard in terms of money and everything, but I had a plan of how to sponsor myself and how to do what I want. And then, I won't go into too many details, but I basically ended up programming by mistake, or let's say forced to program, I would say. And I started my career, I would say, when I was 20 years old. Before that, I didn't have anything to do with computers. Also, as a musician, a lot of musicians are working with computers, recording, do all those things. I couldn't touch computers, so I was just with my gear and my guitar gear. I didn't work with computers at all. I was, even my musician friends were smarter in computers than me.
Wow.
And then I think so when I started, it was kind of like a very large corporation, let's say, or a very large organization.
Yeah.
But the difference, I think, what made it possible for me was that they had really extensive training. So 6 months of training before even starting to work. Then after you do these 6 months of actually training to be a programmer, then you go to your team or to where you're going to work. And then also there was the concept of training. So that you actually, you start, they teach you first about the actual system, and then you build like a sample feature in the system. And only then after 3-4 months, then you actually start to program.
People don't take the time to do that anymore today.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And today I'm working with huge companies, small companies, doesn't matter. And they all, the companies are struggling with all kinds of things. And the basic things of like just the developers you have, the people you come into, like give them some kind of path, some kind of it's not only the training at the beginning, but it's also what they did for us. And I was in that organization for, let's say, 7 years. You always had a path. So every 3 months or 6 months, you sat with your boss, let's call it, and it was just you had a path, and they check up on you. How are you progressing? Like your individual goals.
Okay.
And I don't know. I don't see that today in many large organizations.
They will see it as a cost, so they expect people to come with those skills and then do the job right away and provide them the minimum training needed.
Yeah, and then they complain that people are leaving. It's just so I don't know. I'm pretty surprised by that, and I'm trying to change that in the companies we work with. Yeah. It's not easy, but I think we're every once in a while.
So let's go back quickly to the music. The music thing. Do you still do music, or do you?
Yes. Not enough.
Okay.
But I always have this secret project in my head of what I want to do with music. Which is kind of like this intersection of programming and music. I have a friend that is like my inspiration for all of that, from San Francisco, and he does that for a living. Yeah. And
that's the dream, having being a software engineer, having that has passion, and then buildings, and being a musician and having that as passion, and then building software to create music.
Yeah. So I today what I do is I think this is my dream and my inspiration, but this is something that I'm still striving for, like somehow integrate music into that.
Okay. So then you build this amazing career over time. I'm curious to know how you end up working at companies like Meteor. What was the yeah.
So like I said, I came from like this very old, very big organization, and I worked in C++ and .NET and like all kinds of embedded systems, and I even done assembler for a bit, all kinds of weird
That's a
languages.
Good training, right? Because you get into the hardcore.
Exactly, and when you do that at the beginning, it's very intimidating, but then you realize programming is programming. Like the more languages you learn, the less you get afraid of it. Yeah. And you get the commonalities, and you get cool ideas from different things. So I started there, and I think one of the things that I learned there was also how big organizations work, And as a programmer, when you design, you build systems, it's always the culture is part of the system. But we can talk about that later. But then I wanted to completely break from it, and I joined a startup, like a completely new startup in the banking industry, fintech. But it was very like early on. It was like before. Now everyone is doing fintech.
It's fintech, like the fintech everywhere.
So then it was like more new, but and there I came from completely different background and moved to like the open web infrastructure, like PHP, MySQL, and Angular just came out, and nobody used Angular then. I was I had to build a website or an app, and at the beginning they wanted me to build in iOS, so I learned iOS and I built the app, and then they said no, like any startup, we want to build for the web. So I was like, okay, and they basically, what they told me is like, you don't know web, so we're probably going to fire you and you're going to take a consultancy to do that. So I told them I really wanted this job. I really, believed in the startup and everything. So I told them, give me like 2-3 weeks. If I'll be able to do the job, it's fine. If not, don't pay me for that. And I picked Angular. Everyone was like looking. Everyone was using Backbone.js, and there was Batman.js and Knockout.js and like all kinds. Yeah, what I'm talking about.
Yeah. All the JS stuff.
And Angular was like, the Angular.js was the least, nobody like just heard it was somewhere from Google. And I tried it, and after a day, I had like tons of working, right? Like, because everything was, with ng model, everything was just working.
Yeah, exactly. Just plug ng model, click with it, and then didn't show on the screen.
You didn't think about performance or anything. That nobody cares.
Just put more scope there.
Yes.
I remember that.
So then I did that, and I got the job. And so I started with Angular very early on. I even that was my first talk. I gave a talk about Angular in Google Tel Aviv. And nobody knew what I was talking about. Not in Google or outside of Google. It was completely new. But that was the first time I've seen open source. And then actually the CTO, who is a good friend of mine, we were using PHP and Doctrine. Doctrine is like an ORM, very famous ORM in the PHP world. We use PHP with Symfony. And then one day he came and he was like, I found a bug in Doctrine. And for me, coming from .NET, it's like, okay, you have this vision of these like crazy geniuses in Microsoft that builds everything and there's no bugs or nothing. And he was like, okay. Then the day after, he was like, I think I know what the problem is. And then the third day he came and was like, I have a fix. So I submitted a pull request, and I was stunned. That was like I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
It's like me having access to .NET. What? And I think that already got my mind thinking and everything. And then 2 months later or 3 months later, he came to the job work and said they merged my PR. I was like, what? This is unbelievable. I can't believe it's possible.
Yes.
Then I started, commenting more in the forum of Angular. I started like, basically the whole idea of like, the fact that what you're using is actually open to you, and you can look in and you can change it. And then I thought,
remove the black box.
If everyone could do that, the potential of this thing is nuts. I mean, now everyone is like probably listening and like, well, okay, that's obvious. Like, what are you talking about? But for me, then it was mind blowing.
Yeah.
And that got me to look into Angular, and I think then later I stumbled on Meteor, and I just played with it, and it was amazing. I don't know if anyone that listens remember Meteor, but it was a very visionary framework.
Indeed,
like, very, very visionary framework.
I think if I'm not mistaken, like Meteor, I remember I used it. It was 0.13 when I started using Meteor, and then. It was one of the framework that has optimistic update before anyone on the market is like you do that thing, your UI is already there, but actually there is a call made, and then it will just realign.
I think it was this era where in this. I mean, you were a part of it. You were like in Famous. My mind was blown when you told me that you were working in Famous, and I mean, it was this number of companies like Firebase and Parse and Meteor and Famous, and like that they were just like, okay, let's reimagine the whole thing. And Meteor still has things that I think nobody is doing in the JavaScript ecosystem till today. So it was very visionary, but then I was like this Angular crazy guy. So and they used Blaze back then. So I thought, okay, maybe I can just work with those two. And I found this blog post, and it was like kind of a hack. And then I turned it into a library and I made it work, and then I started, and it became like really famous, or not really famous, but it became a bit popular. And then it was a cool thing. There's ngConf. It's like the biggest Angular conference.
Yeah.
And somehow I saw that they are getting submissions to the
conference
through PRs. So you can submit a PR to the conference. And I was too late, but I'm like, how do you call it? Like, I just do sometimes.
Yeah, just.
So I submitted anyway, and I linked. It was very sneaky of me. I just linked to on the top of my repository. I linked to that pull request and asked everyone to +1 this thing.
Wow.
So the organizer just got like, +1s from people, like the thing that you can't do anymore in GitHub, but everyone was like commenting +1.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, come. So they invited me to San Francisco.
ngConf, yeah.
To ngConf was in Utah, but I flew to San Francisco and I said, okay, I'm gonna go to the Meteor office. And they invited me to give a talk about Angular-Meteor in the office, like to the employees, which was my dream. Like a year before that, I listed the companies that I wish I could work in. The first was Meteor. The second was GitHub, I think. But the first was Meteor, and then you
were there.
I was there giving a talk, and they offered me a job.
Wow.
So I was like,
what just happened there? Yeah. So, I remember, was it in 2013, right? So 13 something? Or early 14?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, because they were organizing those meetups at their office, like the afternoon workshop and then evening talks in the Bay Area. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's really, I think that's a really cool concept, right? Like you are doing that as well. Like you were doing that.
Yeah, but no, I'm only doing in evening, like just workshop. But since we discussed that idea last week during the first Amsterdam GraphQL meetup that you started again, I was thinking like that's a cool idea. Like we can do end of the day, afternoon, we start with the workshop and we tell people like be there, for example, by 5, and then we're gonna act for 3 hours, and then there's food, and then there is a talk, one talk that will probably sum up whatever was discussed during the workshop, and then from there people go home. But that would be a really amazing package to put together.
I think so. I think when Meteor did that, it just felt like, I don't know, at that time they were putting a meetup and they were on a mission.
Yeah.
And they just took everyone in. It was also like Meteor, the idea was you get people who almost don't know how to program and you build like an app with optimistic UI and real-time updates and everything.
Exactly.
So they just were super welcoming. Like they were like, so they really rethought the whole thing of how you get in and, what's the first steps, like that when you just want to build your app, like, I think it's, I think in today's ecosystem, it's actually a bit lacking. This type of thinking. And
we're going to fix it.
Yeah, I hope so.
We're gonna fix it. So then you had, I like the story. Thanks for sharing that. Then you have this experience at Meteor, and then what happened? What happened at Meteor that the framework didn't take off? What will be the main reason for you?
I mean, we can do a whole podcast on that, and there's even like way smarter and people than me that have each one their own story about that. I think so. Meteor was extremely visionary. Yeah. And the idea was, okay, we're rethinking everything. So it doesn't matter what the community has, right? The community has NPM. So what? The community writes Node in a specific way. So what? Yeah. What if we would build everything from scratch? Yeah. And there were, I think, by far the smartest engineers I ever met in this company. So some of them today, one of my best friends from that company works today at Google Brain. So extremely smart people. Yeah. And just the vision was amazing. So on one part, it's still today, I think, even today with Meteor, that now nobody's talking about it, the experience of like building an app today, I don't think there's something even like very close to what it was. but it completely diverted from the ecosystem. So, and I think when it started to come back into the ecosystem, two things happened. Like at some point we were like, okay, the JavaScript ecosystem actually starts to, things are happening, right? Because Meteor started early in the JavaScript ecosystem when Node was very early. Nobody was thinking it's a real thing. But then a lot of, React started picking track. Like NPM became more normal in many, many ways.
Yes.
So then, like, two things happened. One is we started thinking, what is Meteor 2.0? And the main thing was, there are few things, but the main thing was like, how can we align Meteor with the community? Like get all the existing stuff in the JavaScript community, but also all the benefits of Meteor. But then also, I think the company, as a startup, you raise money, and Meteor raised tons of money. I think, you were in Famous, it was... Yeah, those companies raised like crazy amounts of money.
Like you get like 11 million at some point. I remember one of the round.
11 and then another 20. And Famous was like how much? Like
55 million at some point in the bank. Like
nuts.
It's
nuts. So, but then I think that's just all I'm saying now is just assumptions, right? I don't. But when you raise $50 million. You're on pressure to deliver something that is 10x that. So then, I think also on the business side, the people at the people at Meteor started thinking, okay, how can we focus on one thing that we do best, and bring products to that, because you can't keep like taking over all the JavaScript ecosystem. So then it was like, okay, the best thing about Meteor is the data layer. The data layer is just like Meteor just removed that. You didn't care about the network anymore. You just wrote code and it worked and it synced everything. So, and then we were like, okay, Meteor invented the protocol called DDP it's kind of like, because REST just wasn't good enough. Or for those needs. But then we thought, and DDP was a completely open protocol, and the idea that you'll have implementation in .NET, in any language. And there were implementations for that, but the community didn't really pick it up. And at the same time, Facebook started like open sourcing GraphQL. And we looked at it and we thought, okay, like that's actually a really good thing, and it solves a lot of the stuff that a lot of the issues that Meteor had, like connecting to any data source.
Wow.
So at least I think the beginning of Apollo was, what does Meteor 2.0 look like? And then, if you would build it with React and GraphQL and all the new stuff. And then the second phase was, okay, what can we focus on that is the best of what we do? And that's the data layers. So let's just focus on GraphQL and the data layer.
Okay.
And bring all the benefits there. And I think that's kind of like the story, or I mean...
briefly.
There's much smarter people than me. Everyone who worked or works at Meteor are like the smartest people I ever met. Like every single one. And so their visions is probably even way crazier than that. And I could go into crazy assumptions, but I won't.
But I think that the guy who created, probably the two co-founder, or one of them was an MIT grad who created some amazing product before even starting Meteor.
Many of them were working at Facebook, at Asana, they have this. I think one of the smartest guy I ever met. He was working on the build tools and basically the whole developer infrastructure at Google. Like now, at that time, nobody was talking about it, but now everyone knows that Google is like a huge monorepo, a crazy build system and stuff like that. People came from there and built Meteor. So,
wow,
and
impressive.
The CEO and the founders, their vision for this thing is still they're very visionary people. So I'm pretty sure that their vision of Apollo is way bigger than what we see today.
So there is this GraphQL vision that Meteor then start embark in this mission, and then there is a possibility to work on subscription, meaning real-time queries.
Yeah.
And you got a chance to work on it. Could you elaborate a bit more?
Yeah. So one of the amazing things about Meteor was, the real-time capabilities of that. Like when I first, so it made everything extremely simple.
Yeah.
Like at that time, Firebase was like the simplest thing. Everyone at least in the Angular community used it.
People will use Firebase to do stuff, and then you if you've used Meteor, you'll be like, I can have my full stack entirely like real time. So yeah,
exactly. Like when I saw Firebase, so I just asked myself, I can do the same thing with Meteor, and it won't be hosted. It will be completely open source. And if the community will stand behind it, we can make it scalable. We can make it, because at that point, articles started showing up. Okay, I built my Firebase up, and after 2 months, I started to get users, and I'm kind of fucked because like it costs a lot of money, or it's and so it wasn't nice of me, but I started taking each one of the Firebase demos and re-implementing them in Angular-Meteor.
Yeah.
So real-time was, an amazing feature of Meteor. So when we set out to move to GraphQL, we said the first idea was to build this Meteor 2.0. So we thought, okay, we can take GraphQL and add the abilities of real-time into it, which it's not like we invented it. So most of this work was already being done inside Facebook, and they gave very inspiring talks. I think still today one of the best talks about how they do real time with subscriptions, and also a bit touched on live queries. And we thought, okay, we can take this section and push that into the community, because we're Meteor. We're good in that. So I joined Lee Byron and Rob Zhu from Facebook.
Yep.
And I helped them. So I was focusing more on Rob Zhu made the PR for the spec, and I made the GraphQL JS implementation, like the reference implementation. But I thought this was the start of the work where we can push this to the community and expand on that. And Meteor would be that company that pushes it, or Meteor Apollo would be the company that pushes it forward. We created also like 2 other libraries, like GraphQL Subscriptions and the WebSocket implementation. So that was the reasoning to do that, building that Meteor 2.0. But at that point, I think came the financial part of Meteor, and most of the large companies today don't care about real time. And I think that's a mistake, by the way, because GraphQL Subscriptions, one of the amazing features about that is that you can build real-time updates on whatever old infrastructure you have. So you can really reimagine products like, like the big e-commerce site, the airlines, the banks. You can really reimagine a lot of those flows. And you can implement that on their existing infrastructure,
without having to add too much load management.
Exactly.
But infrastructure.
So, but Apollo at that point, I think, realized that's not where the focus should be. So we did that. We did the work until today. When people use subscriptions, they use those libraries. But at that point, I saw that like Apollo went to the direction that was, I think, better for them and better for the community as well. Most of the community just cared about the other capabilities of GraphQL and less about that. I still hope that this thing will be picked up soon.
Okay, so then I can see the like at that moment there is, okay, the financial thing arrives, and then they need to make some decision, take some decision or different route. And then from there you move toward like, okay, you love open source, you have this idea of like, let's build an open source company, like focus. And when I got to talk to you the first time about this idea of like open source, I was like, what's that? What are you doing? What is this idea of like open source owned by each person? So now I'm introducing the Guild, which is a company you put together that's actually been around for a while, but and it's lately that you're actually pushing it a little bit more. That's my point of view. So can you tell us more about this open source model and the Guild in general?
Yeah. So I think, like I said before, open source, the first time that my boss or my colleague contributed to open source and my mind was blown, I just thought, how can I do this, full time? How can everyone do this full time? Now, here comes, I think, the hard part about open source is that you need to sponsor it somehow, and you need to make it sustainable. And there's many different models of doing that. One path, which was, let's take the first one that I was visible to, was the Angular team, right? The Angular team was inside Google. Somehow they convinced some people there that this is a good idea, and Google just sponsored the thing, which I think it's an amazing achievement. Like, it's amazing achievement. React team is also pretty similar in that sense, right? That there's a team inside Facebook. And I think one of the amazing things about, let's say, React is that they're building it like maybe, the biggest consumer website in the world. So they're going to have money to keep, hiring the smartest people on that and keep delivering features that are actually needed by a real product. So that's an amazing thing. But for example, Facebook doesn't do Node on the backend. So you can't have the same stuff on the backend. So that's one model. Like, are you part of this gigantic company? And the downsides of that model, I think, is you're also very limited. Its downsides and pluses, you're limited to the needs of this one product. And I think, in case of the React world, that actually became a plus, because then the community could step up in many other directions.
Indeed.
Now, another model is what, Facebook and Meteor and Famous and those companies did, which is they raised a bunch of money and they, thought about what would be a product we sell. And that's hard because, first of all, I think open source. So, not to say that's hard, but so that's a very good model, because you can basically reimagine things that if you're inside Google or inside Facebook you can't. You have this huge infrastructure. You have a lot of burden on you, and then Meteor, built by people that came from Google, from Facebook, from Asana, are like, okay, if I'll reimagine the whole thing, but in the same standards, I can build this thing. And they raised tons of money, and they got to set up to do that. So that pushed, I think, this model also pushed the whole community like really forward. But that also has some downsides, because you need, again, to deliver on some product, and you need to make money, and you're kind of like, you're in a hurry, right? You're in a hurry, you're in a stress. So there's a lot of stuff that you drop, and that's okay, because you need to drop them in order to do something that is beyond what everything that is happening today. So there's a lot of there's Apollo in the GraphQL world. There's Apollo, there's Prisma, there's Hazura. There's like really impressive companies.
Prior to that, I think most of those companies that raise money, a la Famous or Meteor, they're probably trying to do the Red Hat model, where you have these. They start on building their company on top of an open source, like Linux or things like that, and then they start providing you over time. This, because now you're locked in, you're into their system, and even if it's open source, then you realize that the best way to do deployment is by using the this proprietary thing, or even if it's open source, you still need to use their system, and they're gonna provide you consultant and all the things, or an infrastructure that is easy for you to just use, and then from there you're in their thing, and then they start making money. My understanding of like what Famous was trying to do, or even back then, was like, we're going to create a platform to build mobile application like that are so fast, like using native web technologies, and that will be faster. The promise to get faster than a native app, or as fast as a native app. And then they will provide you that infrastructure, and then the deployment mechanism, even like the way Meteor did it.
Exactly.
It's like you're gonna use Meteor deploy and stuff like that, and that ecosystem there, then you probably need to pay now for deployment and stuff like that. So for developers, they see that lock-in coming in later in the process. You build your stuff, you have the groove, everything is going fast. And then from there, you're like, okay, now you need to pay from this point on. It's a valid point, but I think by the time they've built that infrastructure, people get used to deploying their app on Heroku and all the stuff. And then once you start, you come and then you say, okay, now it's the time to pay.
I think so. The big problem is like, how do you make money? And developers today are, they're used to not paying. Right? Everything is open source. You get React, like an Angular, like the most amazing frameworks for free. Node, you get it for free, and then some company wants to charge you money, and so you're horrified by the idea. But the truth is that you need to have those companies. You need to have those companies to push crazy ideas like Famous did, or crazy ideas like Meteor did. But it also has the downsides. So I think some of the downsides are that those companies, at least at the beginning, needs to move very, very fast. So they drop a lot of things, like maybe community things, maybe libraries that they don't care about. So their libraries they're open source libraries, and they're very famous, but the company just don't have time to maintain it anymore. So. And the other thing for me was, again, like I had this idea of this real time, this Meteor 2.0 vision, and I saw that, for Apollo it didn't make sense, and so I understood why. It was a completely like when Meteor turned into Apollo, I was against it, and I was so happy everyone was smarter than me and did the transition, because I think what Apollo is doing today is way more important. But that initial vision is still important for me. So I thought, maybe there's the open source that comes from big companies, there's the open source that comes from startups. Maybe there's another thing, that can complement those. Kind of like a thing that is moving a bit slower, doing stuff, a bit slower but better in this whole world that keeps moving fast, right? Like all this startup world, definitely in San Francisco, but anywhere, everyone is moving fast. Everyone wants to 10x everything, and they just want to build new shit and move as fast as possible and fight each other. And I thought, there's a lot of stuff here that are being left behind, and maybe it also was me that I just, after, I think in my last months or 2 months at Meteor, I was kind of like, I was traveling a lot. I was kind of like, maybe burned out. I don't know if you could say it. But so I thought, okay, maybe I can do something that would I really thought about it, that could complement all the work that Apollo is doing, because, I was part of that company. I still feel like, their vision is extremely important. Maybe I could do something that complements it in my own way.
Okay.
And then this idea, now the guild was this kind of weird idea that started from me I was always trying, at some point I had, I guess it's a combination of a lot of things. Like open source, but also or let's call it sustainable open source, like open source that is different from, what companies are doing. But also, I think it's more personal. Could
you explain what is exactly what you guys do? I know, but for the people listening and watching, like, how do you do that at the Guild, and what do you think are the benefits of doing open source that way?
So the Guild is a group of it's first of all a group of individuals. So I think it started from me, where I saw, after working in companies, the most successful companies or my dream companies that I ever wanted to work with, I realized there's something in working in companies that is important and you can do an amazing job, but there's also something that kind of limits you. You have this specific job. It's having full control of what you can do, and it comes with a lot of downsides, like you need to pay taxes and learn all those stuff, and you need to, but being also self-employed and an individual gives you extreme freedom. And I thought, just how can I work with a lot of those separate individuals, and each one of them can really completely fulfill their potential, and build some kind of structure over it. And it keeps changing, right? You can't, at the beginning, the Guild was a complete, I don't know how to say, like maybe a communism or something, like a bad word to say, I don't know. But it's like, nobody decides on anything. Everyone just, now we change it through the times, but we're basically, the idea is that we're a group of individuals. Each one does what they love, and the open source, one of the, I guess, what you're asking about really is, like, each library that we build a lot of libraries today in the GraphQL ecosystem. I think if you go to I'll talk about it later, but each library is under a person's name. And the idea is, I saw during my career that people think, and I also thought, that if a library is under a company's name, there's a better chance of this being maintained for long term. I think that's crap. I think that it's actually the other way around, because companies change. They have way bigger goals and way more important goals than to keep maintaining a library.
They can drop the framework anytime,
But the problem is, then, if it's under a company name, there's not an individual that you can come to and say, what's going on with this library? So there's lack of responsibility. And you see that happening, right? You see that, I'll give a couple of examples. So that's, wait, this was distraction for me. Maybe, okay. So there's a couple of examples, like, Prisma, for example. Prisma is, really also a really innovative company. They keep, pushing new libraries, pushing new things. But during that transition of, like, finding what they're really doing, there's a lot of famous libraries that the community is using, and they can't maintain it. So, but it's, for a year or even more, a number of months, there's no communication. But everyone keeps using them because you don't really know it's under a company's name. It's under Prisma, and Prisma is a very active company, so it's probably going to be okay. But so it's very hard also to fork that thing, because it's under a company name. So if you're going to fork, it's going to be very hard to move the community to you. So that's why I thought putting it under an individual name, it means, first of all, the individual is actually a person you can talk to, you can blame, you can interact with.
I like the blaming part.
But it's a responsibility of a person, the contact person. So that's one very important thing. And the second thing, if you're going to fork it, it's going to be much easier, because you're not fighting. If you're going to fork it and have your own opinion, you're not fighting Google, you're fighting Uri. So that's fine. so I felt like this is like maybe another mechanism that can work. And I think today we took over 2 libraries from a company called OKGrow, Merge GraphQL Schemas and GraphQL Scalars.
Yeah.
We took 4 libraries from Prisma, GraphQL CLI, GraphQL Config, GraphQL Import, and GraphQL Binding. And there's more to come.
Yeah.
And our open source model, we were basically able, every library we took, we brought it into a place where there are 0 PRs and 0 issues. Now, people that come to the library, the first thing you don't get used to, you're not used to it because you think 0 issues, 0 PRs, it's probably unmaintained.
Yeah.
But if you see, it's just every day we go through every issue, and we just maintain that library. And I haven't seen a lot of those things in the open source world.
Yeah.
So we move maybe slower, maybe, so I think it just comes from a different place of how you can own yourself. Like we talked about it, I think once when I just came here and we just had a chat where building a company is extremely stressful and
it is.
You deal with a lot of stuff and everything. But if you're able to, first of all, for myself, I wanted to be in a place where I can be relaxed. I can do stuff slower and better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that translates to the open source stuff we do. You can see libraries like GraphQL Code Generator. At the beginning, nobody understood why we're doing it, right? There was other code generators, both from Apollo and from Prisma, were way more popular at the beginning. But we were just like slowly kept maintaining it, slowly every day doing it. And then, today it's like de facto library for those things. And
so if we were to put it this way, so there is this GraphQL ecosystem, and then there is the guild, this amazing group of engineers working on different part of the ecosystem. How could you explain? Could you tell or people listening and watching the ecosystem of GraphQL and where your library, the tools you build fit?
Yeah, so that's, I think also that's the question of why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So people today associate the guild with GraphQL, but it's just because we saw the need there. We just work because I came, like I told you, from very old systems, and now we work with a lot of different clients and different companies with different products. We just build what we need to build. Kind of like similar to, I like the idea of Facebook that if they're not using the open source library, they're not gonna push it out.
Yeah.
So we're the same. Every library that we build is just something that we needed, whether it's GraphQL or not. I think GraphQL just, it's solved so many problems for us that we are very happy with this thing. And we also saw we have, just from the background that I got from Apollo, we fell in love with the technology, but we have libraries that are not completely unrelated to GraphQL. So all those libraries, we build them because we need them. And actually, that's one of the nice things. If another company or another person would build those libraries and they will be more popular and better than us, we're not going to fight it the other way around.
Yeah.
We have less to do, and we'll just support that other library.
Yeah.
So we keep talking, I keep reaching out to like other open source maintainers, and sometimes I think they think that I'm like, or after their library, or like, and it's the other way around. I want to like work together with everyone. I'm not selling anything.
Yeah.
So
what do you think will be the main reason why they think like, you?
I think again, today open source is used as a marketing tool for the big companies. So or for some companies. So, or for even developers. And it's true also for us, but the truth is that most of my clients I didn't get through, even though became very strong in the community, and when people actually hear how many libraries, because it's not under an organization, they don't know how many libraries we own.
Yeah.
But when people see and hear all the amounts of libraries we build, they're amazed. But we actually, I don't think any of my clients came from open source. It was just like talking to people and like, so I wish like open source was a marketing tool for me, but it's not. And I think people today use open source as something more than just solving a problem. So then when you have an asset like a popular library, you don't feel comfortable sharing it, or like, because you feel like you would lose like it's like losing today a popular NPM library is like losing a popular domain name, right? Yeah. Like so I think that's part of the why people are, but slowly I think people, they get to hear about us, what we do, and then they get more understanding, and the barriers get low down, and I can just talk to them. Why are you doing what you do? Maybe you do this, we do that. Maybe you do all of this, we'll support you. Yeah. So for your actual question, which is like, why GraphQL and how does it help us? I think for me it's just GraphQL is kind of like going back to basics in some ways. When I programmed C++ or .NET, SQL basically saved a lot of code for me. I got a lot of guarantees, and I could just query what I want, and it would just save me tons of manual code to re-architecture the data, restructure the data, and I got complete type safety for all the app and everything.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the way, we moved to the web, and so there's like REST, there's no types, there's nothing, JavaScript, no types, no nothing. And it's the MongoDB, no SQL, no rules. And I think slowly the community starts to think, wait, but actually all those things are actually helpful. Like there's reasons why they were there.
They were there, yeah.
So TypeScript, is becoming super popular. And GraphQL is kind of like this, if you think TypeScript is helpful, GraphQL is like the next level helpful, because it gives you all those benefits that you get from TypeScript, but over the network and between different teams. And so it basically saves tons of code, whether you use it on the client, whether you use it between the client and the server, or even when you use it on the server.
Yeah.
Like people, I feel like GraphQL became the entry point for front-end developers to look at the backend, to look at the whole stack, and look at the broader sense of the problem. When you just build the app on the front end, you don't get the whole perspective. So whatever you do, I think the app won't be as good, or it was true. I think looking at the backend, looking at the bigger set of problems, it's not harder. It's not like the backend people are smarter than the front end people. Like I think all Twitter, you can see that like CSS is way harder than everything else.
Yeah.
So it's just open your mind to look at the whole stack. And I think GraphQL was kind of like this entry point.
Yeah.
Or kind of like what Meteor was supposed to be.
Yeah.
You're a front-end developer. Look at the backend problems also. So yeah, I think it just helps saving a lot of code. It helps you look at the bigger perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be happy to have you on. Like we dive into like each segment of like GraphQL, and then trying to understand, because I think it's an amazing tool. It's amazing technology, and it's in a more advanced, like now we get to know you and then get to see like the environment you operate in.
Yeah.
I think the next step will be to really dive into every single library and the technicality of the thing. But today I will just in an overview, what will be the most difficult thing, let me put it this way: the missing piece in that ecosystem today. What will be the missing element?
I think. So you mean like looking at the ecosystem,
and
what's currently we don't have?
Yeah. Like like cross companies, Apollo, you take everyone and then you're like, this is one aspect that we're missing in the, or that still needs to be.
I think that how maybe a bigger question on that is, or this area is, how does GraphQL change what we do today on the backend? I think today most people are looking at GraphQL and looking just at replacing REST, which is true. It's great. It's better for performance and everything. But on the two sides of the stack, it actually has huge benefits. Like it has way more implications than just replacing your network call.
Yeah.
So on the front end, there's a bunch of solutions, very interesting, like Relay, Apollo, and other stuff. And way more than both of them. Like it's a really interesting area to look at. But on the back end, I think at least there's a lot of work that the backend is doing today that I would say it's not like it's replacing it, but I think because that's what also a lot of people are thinking. They think that if you can query for what you want and you can map the data, then everything you do on the backend is gone. And that's completely not true. It's just makes the backend, give them a more defined role. If you split everything to microservices or things like that, the split is much more clear. There's the gateway that responsible of shaping the data, but then you can actually tell the backend developers, forget about adjusting the data to the front end. The front end will do it. The product will do that. Focus on your actual business logic of the microservice. And I think that's an area where there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of confusion because it's very new. And I also think there's huge opportunities there.
Okay.
And all the solutions that we see today are great, but they're not really, it's just the start.
Okay. Interesting. So I have a few more questions for you, but I think that will probably take like the whole evening.
I would love to have all the time.
But I really would like to have you on again because we're trying to keep the old format under an hour. But here is the thing: before we break today, is there? I told you about this chain of like people that inspire you, and then trying to know, do you have people that inspire you that if you were to host a podcast sitting at my position and have them in front of you, like are those people exist? Who would they be?
There's a bunch.
Let's take a few that. So, because that you're gonna make our life really difficult. Because now we're gonna go out there and find them and invite them on the podcast, and so that's. But
good. I'll give you a hard job now. I think. So in that context, I think actually. I don't know how the CEO of Meteor and Apollo. He's such a smart guy, but he's also such a visionary, I think. And I think, I don't know how much, if you'll agree for that or how much will he share, but having a conversation with him about what is GraphQL and where it could lead to will probably blow people's minds like forever.
Okay.
I don't know even what his answers will be, but I'm sure it will blow people's minds.
Wow.
Jeff Schmidt. Probably any engineer in Apollo that you will invite here would be a good idea.
There is a guy working on the Apollo team who lives here in Amsterdam.
Martijn,
yeah,
of course. If you can get him, of course.
Yeah.
He's amazing. Yeah, every single person there. There's a lot.
So are you saying that we should invite Jeff here and then you will be hosting a podcast with him and then ask him those questions? Because I'm not the one asking the question.
I would love to do that.
So I don't know if Jeff is watching us, but if you're watching us right now, I know you're in San Francisco, and Amsterdam seems to be like too far away. It's just 10 hours flight. So we get you here, or we come your way, and then we're gonna bring Uri with us to ask some questions. Because GraphQL is an amazing tool. I think we can really go the whole evening on it. So I will want to have you on again, and we can really do like diving further in every single segment, because that's probably where I see the the value for people using that ecosystem to realize that there are many areas that still needs to be developed, and you guys are doing already a few of them. So
and I'll just add another person that I think about.
Okay.
Tanmay, he's I think the CTO or the CEO, I don't know, of Hazura.
Azura. Oh yeah.
Extremely smart guy.
Tool. Yeah.
Extremely nice guy.
Yeah.
And also his perspective on the ecosystem is, I learned a lot from him.
Where is he based?
I think he's between Bangalore in India and San Francisco.
Okay.
Probably half or something.
Okay.
And what I learned from him is like the importance of SQL, and how SQL is kind of like, the whole ecosystem now is going back to SQL. And it used to be people stopped using it because you couldn't scale SQL, but today is not true anymore. Like the whole ecosystem is turning back, and you have like worldwide scalable databases that you can write SQL to. Indeed. So yeah, that's also blew my mind.
So we have a few people to meet. Okay, people, we have another episode of the Actflix podcast. Today we had Uri on, and it's just part 1 out of 10, probably. So he's gonna come back, and please ask your questions, and hopefully you enjoyed this episode. And till next time, have a good time. Bye everyone.